Okay, well, welcome everyone. I thought tonight we would talk about the symbols that we work with, uh, primary symbols. As you may know, maybe not, the three primary symbols are the circle, the triangle, and the square. And we use them in our spiritual work, not just simply as diagrams, of course, but as ways to work with energy. Now, I'd like you to consider what it's like to stand in a circle. Say you're feeling maybe not very centered, and you want to collect yourself spiritually and find where you stand, kind of metaphorically and literally. So you draw a circle on the floor or on the ground, and you stand in the middle of it. You can immediately get a sense that there's something about the circle that has a reality that transcends physical reality. And of course, this is how it interacts with your mind. You know, you see the circle, and the definition for a symbol that I like to use is that it activates a deeper part of your being. When we look at a circle, it's not just a diagram, it's not just a shape. It's actually a catalyst, you might say. It's something that activates the deepest part of our mind. And as it does, it brings certain forces into play. It activates these forces in you. So when we deal with symbolism, that's the difference between a symbol and a sign, you might say. The symbols are alive. They have a life of their own. And when we see them, they bring us into a different plane of reality. So we have these three primary symbols: the circle, the triangle, and the square. And I'm going to briefly touch on all three of these, and then we'll come back to them. Then we're going to discuss how to load them with energy so that we can get a sense of what they do. And then we're going to look at ways to put them to work, how we can actually use them in our lives. So this is part and parcel of alchemy. This is the esoteric part of Christianity. And of course, it precedes Christianity, but all of these teachings are in Christianity, in mystical Christianity. So we want to recognize them when we see them, and because when we do, then all of the teachings that are in the New Testament will revolve around this basic esoteric knowledge, so that we can see how things connect. Because the New Testament is not just a list of behaviors, how to behave, how to get into heaven, you know, that kind of thing. The New Testament is a handbook. It's a handbook for how to live our lives. And in order for us to live our lives effectively, we have to know how to operate on the various levels of our being. You know, we have a physical part of our reality, we have an emotional part of our reality, we have feeling, and we have our mind, our intellect. We also have the spirit, you know, that which is kind of above us and guides and directs us, you know, through everything. So we have these three symbols. We have the circle, the triangle, and the square. The triangle is really an interesting symbol because it describes more of an activity than it does a presence like the circle. Although, you know, I was thinking about this today, contemplating this in preparation for the class. And if we take a circle and put it in 3 dimensions, we have a sphere. And a sphere is very different than just a symbol, you know, drawn on a blackboard or on the floor. So the three-dimensional form of the triangle, you have two actually, the tetrahedron, or the the four-sided pyramid, three sides and a fourth at the base. But we also have the the pyramid shape like we have in Egypt, which which is where they performed sacred initiations. It's not just a tomb. I don't think it was ever a tomb. It was always a temple. So just as you can imagine standing in a circle and how that makes you feel, imagine standing with a pyramid around you. So that, like, at the top of your head, kind of like where the crown chakra is, that's the apex of the pyramid. And then the four sides form a square on the floor. So just take a moment and imagine what that would feel like. Now, I tried that today, and it's an amazing feeling of stability. Normally, we don't form a square, because we have them all around us, right? We're in a house. Unless you live in a dome house, you're in a square room more than likely. So we live with squares all the time, and there's something about, I mean, there's more than just the efficiency of building a house on the pattern of a square. There's more to it than that. There's something very solid about living in squares and cubes. A house is way different from living in an RV, for instance. I know I lived in an RV for 2 years, and it's a very different feeling from living in a house, because a house is connected to the ground. It's connected to the earth. And so you're not only grounded, but also it communicates something to you. It communicates that stability, that groundedness, so that we do feel connected with the earth, and that has a balancing effect on us. If we always lived, in the air, we'd be different beings. We'd have a completely different psychological and spiritual makeup. We live on the ground, and we're deeply and intrinsically connected with the earth, and everything about the earth affects us, and we affect it. So that's one sense of the triangle, how we can view the triangle as a four-sided pyramid. But also consider what it's like when you're in a room with one other person. And say it's a large room, say like an auditorium, and you're standing in the middle of a basketball court, and you're out there with one other person, and they're about 6 feet, 8 feet away from you. That's a definite dynamic. We're used to that dynamic. We're used to being with one other person and how the energy works with one other person. But when you add a third person and you're in a triangle, that changes the whole dynamic. You get a sense of how that feels? So when there are three people, you're in a whole different thing. If you're by yourself, that's an entirely different feeling as well. Two people and then three people, and it's, I know that I'm not sure which field, probably in psychology, but when you form a team of people, a team of three is always better than a team of two. And it works better than a team of four. Three people working together seems to work really well. There's kind of a balancing aspect, a balancing dynamic that goes on. And so if that's going on psychologically, we know that it's also going on spiritually. So there's just an entirely different outlook on reality when you're with two other people, when there are three people there. So that's another way yet that we can look at the triangle and what it means. And that would be on the feeling level, right? That's like, how does it feel? It's more of a sense of reality that's more tactile not just cognitive, not just conceptual, but a real feeling for for the dynamic, the energy, and how it moves. So let's look at the square now too, and I'm going to switch the picture here. Okay, you see that? This is like the inside of a cube. Eli, you'll recognize this. It looks, very similar to the cube of space. But really, it's this is basic geometry where we have the X, Y, and Z axes. And we can see how it bisects the square, the cube in 3 ways. Now, let me show you another picture here too. Okay, so this is that same diagram. It's really important that we learn to locate ourselves in space, not just physical space, but emotionally and mentally and spiritually, and especially in terms of will. We all have willpower. Will is our choice. It's the way we move in the world, whether physically, emotionally, mentally, or spiritually, is determined by our will. It's our intention, right? Our intention put into action. That would be a good way to express what the will is. So in order to do this, we have to get familiar with these 3 axes as they exist in us. We have a vertical axis. It's essentially why we're upright. Our spine is constructed on this vertical axis. We have a front and back. We move towards things. We move away from others. And we have a left and a right. So we have the up and down, forward and back, and the left and right. Now, if we go back to this other diagram, I would like you to imagine what it would be like to get a sense of yourself in space. And this is based in biology. We have bilateral symmetry. Not in the abdomen, but every other part of our body is bilaterally symmetrical. It means we have a left and a right, and they're roughly the same. So if you can imagine being in a room or out in the open, it doesn't matter, and having a plane going right through the middle of you, forward and back, fore and aft. So your world is divided into left and right. And it's very interesting when somebody loses the part of the brain that governs like the right eye, they can only see what's on the left side of them. They don't see anything on the right. So if that works in vision, then we know that it works it works mentally, it works emotionally, spiritually, physically. We have this bilateral aspect to ourselves. So what? Why is that important? If we understand that, then we can begin to understand how the energy that we invoke when we go into prayer, we go into meditation, and we're invoking the power of God to move in and through us, that power is going to come in and work through this structure. So if we understand this, then we can understand more of how energy works. Now, likewise, let's look at the at the that orange salmon colored plane, the horizontal plane. So we've got this left and right aspect. We also have up and down. Now just think, even linguistically, how important those terms are. When things are up, we generally consider those good. When they're down, we not so good, right? We have like a scale, a hierarchy of values, a hierarchy of good. The up is good, down not so good. And that reflects in a lot of ways that we use language, in metaphors especially. So if you center your consciousness, say, in your solar plexus, and you divide the up from the down from that point, then if you're an athlete, or say a dancer or martial artist, somebody who really moves through space, especially like a gymnast, the awareness of that division will give you enormous advantages in how able you are to locate yourself in space and know how your body relates to it. When an athlete really gets in touch with that, that's called being in the zone. It's being in the zone, because you have this intimate connection with everything around you, especially like a dancer. You can move, you feel, you move by feeling. So getting a sense of that plane will open up parts of your brain that you don't normally use. So it's really good that you do that. So now we're dealing with this plane, the one that goes fore and aft, in the horizontal plane. Now the left and right part of us, that deals with choice, right? On this hand, on the other hand, we can do this or we can do that. You see how that translates conceptually? And we have the idea of mirroring and, bilateral symmetry, all of that. So if you focus on this diagram and not just stare at it, but really take it within and find how your nervous system connects with this. You see, how does your body interact with this division? You might call this like the architecture of the body's sense of itself in the earth plane. And if that's its sense of itself in the earth plane, then because of the principle of as above, so below, that will reflect itself in feeling, in the mentality, and in spiritual. So one of the things that symbols shows us is the way that heaven and earth are connected, because the changes we make in the earth are reflected in heaven, and the changes we make in heaven are reflected in the earth. This is the basis of ritual. So let's talk about how to use this energy. We talk first of all about the circle. But first of all, you'll need to unmute yourself if you have a question, but I'll open it up for questions here before getting into how to work with the energy. If you have a question, just unmute yourself and go ahead. If not, that's okay. We can wait till the end. Okay, so when we work with the circle, what does that do? What does that feel like? We realize that we are in the center of the circle, and that equidistant all around us, there's an energy field. And this is actual. I mean, if you look at the work that they do in heart math, there's that toroidal field of energy around us, and that's circular. It has no resistance in the earth plane because it's not in the earth plane. It's just above it. So we're in the midst of a circle all the time anyway. And the more, if we can become aware of that, then we will develop a facility for feeling when another energy field interacts with it. So that could mean sensing when somebody's looking at you from behind. Some people are really good at that. They know when somebody's staring at them, and they turn around and look, and sure enough. Or you have a sense of, say you're dancing with somebody, you get a really good sense of how they're moving, and you can coordinate yourself with them. You can merge with them and become one with them, because what you're doing, you're not just going off sight, you're going off the feeling. You're picking up their energy and you're matching your energy to theirs. This happens on a higher level than just physical. Mentally, say you're concentrating, you're focused, you're contemplating a problem. Say, you're reading scripture and you're trying to figure out what a certain passage is saying. There's a field around that, and that field is spherical. So the more you potentialize that field, which is what you do when you focus on one idea, the more you potentialize it, which means you're packing it with energy, the more it will draw to itself that which is like it. And you will repel away from it that which is not. So by focusing on a singular idea, you draw to you. It's like opening a door. It's like opening a door to a cosmic library. Everything that has to do with that idea will be revealed to you, because it's being drawn to that through vibrational resonance. Because thoughts on the mental plane are things. They have shape, they have form, they have a vibratory signature, they have an energy with particular qualities and characteristics. Even colors and sounds are associated with certain thoughts. So by working with these symbols, we start to open up those parts, the dormant parts of our brain that we maybe have gotten glimpses of them, from time to time in our life. They kind of pop open briefly and then they shut back down, and we hang on to such experiences and we think, wow, I really want to get back to there. I want that. So there are ways to get back to those formative experiences, those formative spiritual experiences. You can reawaken them, but you have to do it deliberately. These are not, these states of consciousness are not natural. They don't come with this body. We have to develop them. They're like skills. You have the capacity, you have the physical capacity, say, to swing a hammer. But until somebody shows you how to do it, you won't do it very well, right? It's not natural. Tools are not natural. We make tools, but the reason that we can make tools is that it begins as a concept. And that concept filters down into the body, and then the body and the mind together figure out what kind of tool is needed. And then we make the tool, and then we learn how to use it. But it's a joint venture. Mind and body work together, and then that develops, certain muscle memories, and through through the receptors in our body, we get feedback, and we just naturally learn how to use the tool. But we have to do it deliberately. Spiritual work of this nature is the same. It's not natural. It just doesn't happen on its own. Some people come in with, faculties, spiritual faculties already awakened, but they're bringing that with them from previous efforts to develop them. And then they come into a body that has a brain that is more open to that. So by working with these symbols, we can start to tell how their energy works. When we work with a circle or a sphere, we get a sense of the energy of that. Now, how is a circle? Think of how a circle is created in the most natural way. Say you're out in nature. How would you create a circle? And I mean a perfect circle. You can't really draw it, I mean, you can get really close with that. But the easiest way is to take a pebble and throw it into a pond. That creates a perfect circle. So the Zen saying, what's the sound of one hand clapping? There's a Sanskrit term called anahata, which means not hit. And it is associated with the heart chakra. It's the anahata. And it is the sound that is not made by two things striking each other. This is really a good meditation, which is why it's a Zen koan, right? So anytime you initiate an action, and you're going to laugh at this, but it's just so beautiful. I just thought of it the other day. If you've seen the movie Spider-Man, in the first one, where he's just figuring out what kind of powers he has, and he realizes that he's got the little orifice on his wrist, and he can do this, and the spider web comes out of his wrist. You know that? Have you seen that? So get a feeling for that. It's like if you do this, you're initiating an action. And just like he did not really understand how he was doing that, he had to do it until he got it. Right? It's kind of like learning to ride a bicycle. You try and you try and you try, and then it happens. You get balance, but you don't know how you got it. And it's like fixing your computer. You fiddle and it works, but you have no idea how you did it. It just happened. So I can relate to that. So if you get a sense of whenever you make a decision, and you get that inner feeling of this, we're going to do this, you see? That's you moving forward into the earth. And when you do that, you create a circle. I don't know who did that. That's pretty cool. So you create a circle. And not just the shape of a circle, but the energy of a circle. In other words, your action, it's like the butterfly effect. Your action is going to spread out far into places you have no idea. You have an idea with intention. You speak words with intention. It's like doing this and creating this. You create an opening. You see, a circle is an opening also. So say you wanted to, don't try this. But if you were to say, draw a circle on the wall, you could look at that circle and look through the circle. Let me give you something better. This is something that's not quite so risky. In the order, one of the first exercises we were given was as we got in bed at night and laid down on our backs, we were to look at the ceiling, but then look through the ceiling to the stars, to look out into space, but through the ceiling. Now, anybody with modern intelligence would say that's impossible. But it's not. It's not impossible. Because, I mean, if you're trying to look with your physical eyes, then yeah, it's impossible. But we know that our consciousness is not confined to our skull. We know that consciousness is everywhere. It's not created by our brain. Our brain is like an organ of reception for consciousness. And if anything, it's a reducing valve. It's a reducing mechanism to cut down on the allness so that we can relate, so that we can deal with the input. If we had no filters in our brain, if it wasn't a reducing mechanism, we'd be overloaded and we would not be able to cope with it. It would just simply swamp us. So the brain is specific to the physical body, and the body is specific to this plane of vibration. So it's entirely set up to survive here. That's why I say these spiritual faculties are not natural, because they're not needed here. In fact, consider this. If you were the one responsible for inventing, creating this planet and inhabiting it with intelligent, sentient beings, human beings, and also you inhabited the whole planet with animals, and the animals would feed on each other, and the human beings would feed on the animals. Would you give your little progeny the ability to see and locate and know where all the animals were? Think what would happen. I mean, if you're smart enough to create a planet and all these different species, you would also know that if you gave any of them that ability, they would quickly wipe out whatever species they wanted to eat, and the system would not work. So you might consider that because the body is here on this plane of manifestation, that those abilities maybe are intentionally shut off, right? Somebody got in there and messed with the settings and said, oh, intuitive, location of food sources, we're going to turn that off. Because it's kind of our nature to take too much, right? And be wasteful. So, and also having to hunt for our food or anything else, right? Not just food, but hunt for anything that develops the mind. You see, this is in favor of evolution. If everything was really easy here, we would not evolve. We wouldn't grow. We just get fat and happy. So there are different, there are different aspects that play into our consciousness and its abilities and its disabilities. And it's important to know because, this is one reason why people aren't taught these kinds of these tools, aren't given these tools or taught how they work, because the propensity for misusing them is too great. So usually in a mystery school, the novices have to prove themselves. They have to show that they have moral integrity, that they have a certain level of moral development, to where they're not entirely selfish, that they know how to give, they know how to protect, they know how to identify larger systems, and are able to care for the long-term survival of these complex systems, like an ecosystem or a family system or a tribal system. So if everybody was just simply out for themselves, those systems would not survive, and then neither would human beings, because we need each other. We're a social being. So understanding these symbols and understanding how the energy, understanding what energies they invoke. They both are the result of a certain kind of energy, but by using the symbol, you can invoke those energies if you are conscious of it. You know, because the symbol by itself doesn't do anything. It's the way we interact with it. It's the effect the symbol has on us. This is not like parlor magic. This is deeply spiritual and psychological. When we see a circle, it activates something in us, and then we are able to affect the world with that energy. And the same with the triangle, the same with the square. So I'm going to open it up now for questions or conversation, whatever. I know that this is a lot. So let's talk about it. And go ahead and unmute yourselves. The button in the lower left, the little microphone. What do you think, Jesse? What do you got?
I'm kind of wanting to talk more about the you're saying someone got in there and adjusted the settings, and I feel like there's more that can be said about that, because I think it's even better than that, like in the sense that, like, how would you say? I wanted to kind of see how that fit in with the idea of heaven and earth, bringing heaven and earth together. And when the heart is in the midst of where it is, like, say, the heart is always in the midst, in the center. So, like, if you take the circle, in order to draw a circle, you need an anchor point, which is always in the center, and then you scribe your circumference, and that's kind of like a symbol of the body in a sense.
Yes.
Yes,
right.
Because the heart would be the center, and then you would have the womb of, the vessel in a way. And
yeah. And it's not so much the physical heart, right? It's the feeling. It's like we feel we are in the center of everything.
Mm-hmm. Like the true heart,
yeah.
So it seems as though it is all one, but it's a vertical pillar, like that. The axis is vertical, and it pierces through these planes. And when we exist on that one plane, in a sense, it's limiting, but necessarily so that our heart could be where it needs to be. And as we maybe master that, we can integrate the other aspects. Does that make sense? That's what I was thinking. And
it does. Well, it really helps to know the purpose why we're here. And when we think of God as a creative being, then we can understand that God created this world, but then needed a way to experience it. So for that, he needs these bodies, because you can't experience a plane of manifestation unless you have a vehicle that is of the same substance.
Right.
You see? So we're just being used. We are being used. God is using us. We are here to experience the creation for God. And this means, Meister Eckhart went into this a lot. He said, I think just baldly, he said, God needs me. That's a pretty bold thing to say, right? God You know, that I'm looking with, God's looking with. See, there's no separation.
Hmm.
So when we understand that, when we understand that God is not conscious of this plane of reality, and that God, just like we need senses to understand what's going on here, so does God, and these are God's senses. You see? That's why, you know, that's why we pray, because, you know, even if we're praying for help, we have to connect through, we have to do the connection. There are, you know, we have to ask. You have to ask, because unless you ask, God doesn't know what kind of trouble you're in. You've got to reach up, you got to make the connection. Then God can see you. Now, I know this goes against a lot of religious conditioning that may have been inflicted upon you. You know, because God is supposed to be all-knowing, right? God is supposed to see every little thing you do, right? That's not the way it is. The way it is that you have to open up and let God see what you're doing. Otherwise, you're in the dark. You're in the
Not
blind, as they
receptive.
say. Right. God cannot see you unless you're conscious of God. You know, and you know, what about all the masses of people who get, you know, human beings, for the most part, they get so enthralled in earthly existence that they forget about God altogether. And how does God see them? It's kind of like an amorphous mass. It's very hard for God to see individuals unless and until individuals start to wake up. When you wake up, then God can see you, because you become conscious of God. And as you become conscious of God, God becomes conscious of you. This is why it's so that our spiritual work is so important, because the more God is conscious of us, because God loves us, things start to happen, right? Things start to open up in our lives. Some of those things we're not going to like, because when things open up, that means you have to change. And we don't like change. We hate change. We would much rather find a rut and stay in it, because it's predictable. And after a while, it gets comfortable.
Find your groove.
Find your
Rut.
groove, baby. Or your rut. Yeah, one man's groove is another man's rut.
Yeah.
So this is kind of, this is the nature of our situation. And if we understand it, then we can start making connections between us and God. And the easiest way to make a connection is by getting in touch with divine energy, spiritual energy, and using it. Simple way: somebody's sick, somebody in your family is sick, you can put your hands on their head and ask God for a healing. Because you're conscious of God, God then becomes conscious of you, and then through you, God becomes conscious of the person who needs a healing. You see, that's kind of why it's necessary to put your hands on them. And if you're a really good healer, you can do that at a distance, but you're doing it on another plane where you're actually making contact, and God can work through that contact. But without a contact or a connection, nothing moves. You've got to have contact. You have to make a connection before God's power can move.
Seek
Just like
first.
electricity. What's that?
Seek first the kingdom.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, look for it. Make the connection.
So
And
am I catching this correctly, Michael? And then in order to do this, I essentially need to be the God's random thought until it
no, not a
becomes
random thought.
that he pays attention to me, or that they pay attention to me. The
No,
you know,
no,
real
this
he.
this is where the Christian terminology of Son of God comes in. So, you know, this is, we're using the masculine pronoun, you know, the noun. A son of God in you know, traditionally throughout history, the son was always the direct heir, not an employee, not a slave. You see, not just some Joe Blow, member of the public. No, a direct extension of the Father. So we, men and women, are direct extensions of God. And that means we are extensions of God the same way that our hand is an extension of our body. You know, the hieroglyphs in the inside of the Egyptian tomb where the sun, all of its rays are radiating outward, and at the end of each ray is a hand. That's us. We are that hand. We are the point of contact with the earth plane for God, represented by the sun. So this is why in the West we place all the importance on the individual, because we value life. Each and every individual life is cosmologically unique and special, because each person, each individual soul is an extension of God. So we're not just a random thought. We are so specifically created, but not made, you know, not made like we would make a loaf of bread. No, made like when we make children. That's how we are made. So
How does that work?
How does that work?
Yeah, that's a complicated question. We're not gonna.
Yeah.
So you wanna, never mind.
Yeah, right. I know, right? Oh, we could go all kinds of places with that, but we're not going to. So just know that's our relationship with God. You know what Jesus called God? He called him Father. You know, that's how it's translated into English, but the Aramaic word was Abba. You know what that means? Doesn't mean father, it means daddy. That is a close, personal, intimate relationship. That's how real it is. And if we can get in touch with that, then everything starts to open up. It changes us from the inside out. And then if you see something that's been created out of these symbols that we're talking about, then you recognize them because you can feel the energy of them. Imagine what it would feel like to be in the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid of Egypt, of Giza. I have friends who have been there, and they say it's extraordinary. So there's a direct link between these shapes, but it's important, and the earth and heaven, these shapes act like intermediaries, but it's important to realize that they need us. You say you can, if a circle is lying on the side of the road, you know, tossed out by accident, that's not going to do anything sitting there. That's superstitious. But if a person is taking a circle and using it to alter their own internal spiritual sense, then that's going to do something, right? Because that is putting energy into motion. And then because we're all connected to everything, through that connection, real energy can move. But no connection, no movement. You see, no intention, which means will. No intention, nothing happens, nothing moves. If you want something to happen, you got to move. You got to design it, give it some parameters, and then move into it. This is true in physical, especially true emotionally. You know, if you want a relationship, you have to kind of come to some idea in yourself what that relationship is going to look like and what it's going to feel like. And then you move into it, right? You move in that direction, and then you're going to draw it to you. I mean, it cannot not come to you if you do it that way. You know, say mentally.
Would you say, Michael, it's we're talking about a form of communion, or there has to be an exchange, you say, when it comes to God? And to Derek was saying, am I a random thought? And I'm thinking, maybe we need to clarify here that it's important that we are maybe well, this is new for me, understanding that what makes me receptive is my capacity to, well, first inquire or wonder and imagine something, you know, thinking about God, imagining. And that inquiry is an energy exchange because it creates a vacuum or a place that can be filled. So when we're looking for God's attention, you're saying being conscious of God, first we have to be able to have some conception, some wonder, some inquiry, creating that negative impression, you could say, or the opposite of what you want, which would be the answer to that, or the source of that, what you're wondering about. So that would be, in a sense, God's attention is, you know, that which will fill the void that you've created with your inquiry, with your wondering. And does that make sense? Is that along the lines
Perfectly.
of what you're saying?
Yeah. Anytime a mechanic has a car up on a rack and he's underneath looking at it and he wonders what's making that noise. You see, that's a prayer.
Right.
Because what's he doing? He's open mentally, on the mental plane, he's opening up to possibility. What could it be? You see, what might it be?
Mm-hmm.
And then that working through his knowledge then will that brings in universal intelligence that's also creative. And in this case, the creative part would be fix the damn problem. Right? A scientist is dealing with you know, some phenomenon, you know, maybe something with the structure of genes, and there's that big question. See, the act of asking a question is exactly what you called it. It's a vacuum. And that's why they say that a properly formulated question, you're almost all the way there. And it's in the way we use AI right now, like with ChatGPT. What you get out of ChatGPT is entirely dependent on the question you ask it. And the more detailed the question, the better it will deliver. God's the same way. You know, we really have to know how to ask a question. That's where it starts. And you know, we're born that way, right? We're born as this huge question. Babies are like They're like this huge, they're just a question mark laying in a crib. And that
Maybe,
draws,
well, I just wanted to take it a step further and say that we can inquire, and then in doing something, so that would be the other side of the equation, is in the actual doing, having at least some knowledge on where to step next in our lives. Like probably all of us here don't know 10 paces from where we're going, but we at least know some place to put our foot next. It could be something
yes,
trivial, but it's something. And in taking that step, knowing that that is the next step, that's where it's another opportunity for that exchange, because it's stepping in trust and knowing that that in the outward flowing, which would be the doing, there has to be something to come in and replace that. And if we're aligned with that right path, maybe that thing that comes in to replace that would be exactly what we're wanting. Like it's the idea of blessed is the merciful, for he will receive mercy, kind of along those lines of stepping out and doing and getting exactly what we're looking for in a sense.
yeah,
And I'm
yeah,
just
because
ranting on about this, but correct me if I'm off course here.
no, this is great, because as you take that step, you're feeling your way towards your goal. Even if your goal is not really clearly formed, the act of stepping forward towards even an unknown goal will help clarify what that goal is. With each step you take,
With
it kind
intention.
of, yeah, with intention.
With intention, you as you step, the path appears.
Exactly. Do you see how simple this is? I mean, we experience this all the time. We have a problem, we don't know how to fix it, but we just start working on it. We just take steps. And the more steps we take and the more we think about it, then the problem becomes better defined, which is like, you could also say that it becomes a better question. And the better the question, the more available is the answer.
Well, it's what's this popular saying? What we are seeking is seeking us. It's the
Yeah.
calling. It's the calling forth from self that is unfolding in us, and it's like a rose, right? And it continuously unfolds, and more is revealed, but there's always more. There's always more.
Right. Right. And it's a process of discovery.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm gonna share this. This thought occurred to me years and years ago, but I was thinking, if I were omnipotent, all powerful, whatever, and wanted to give my children like the best gift I could give, one possibility that occurred to me would be to make them absolutely perfect and eternally perfect, and then allow them to discover that for themselves eternally.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's not a bad, it's not a bad conversation to have.
Right. Right. Yeah. You
That's
you
nice.
you make them perfect, but then you hide it from them.
Right. That's right. You let them discover who they are.
Yeah. Easter eggs, anybody?
Right.
Gifts under the Christmas tree that are always wrapped.
Right.
You
Right.
see, these are simple truths that resound throughout our entire culture.
Right.
So if you remember nothing else, remember that God is creative and that God is also in a process of self-discovery. God is seeking God's own perfection and wants to unite with it, wants to become it. And if we are cognizant of that and we make ourselves available, God's an opportunist. He will use anyone who opens up. Doesn't matter who you are, what your past is. None of the things we categorize ourselves with amounts to a hill of beans when it comes to God's willingness to use us as an agent of God's journey of self-discovery. I mean, this changes everything. If you want a theology, this would be a good one to have, because there's no sin. You know, there are mistakes, there's plenty of mistakes, but the mistakes are out of trying and missing the mark, right? But at least you're aiming at a target and you're shooting, right? The worst thing is to not even be aiming.
And you miss until you don't.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Miss until you don't. Yeah, it's a learning curve. It's a learning cycle. We learn in cycles. It's like walking towards a horizon. You reach the horizon you've been walking for, and then you discover an entirely new landscape, and you think, oh, maybe I should walk a little bit over this direction instead of straight ahead. And your goal then defines itself with each horizon you reach. And in your example, Jesse, the taking each step is a horizon.
And it's proximal.
And it's proximal. Yes. Yes. It's very important.
Mm-hmm.
Now, keep it close. Keep your spiritual work close to home. In other words, my teacher said that if one of these teachings couldn't help him in the thing he was going to do next, he wasn't interested. He was the most anti-philosophical person I've ever known. He didn't care about ideas and concepts unless you could put them to work, put them to use in the thing you're doing next. And doing next could mean changing a diaper, cooking dinner. Hell, it could even mean robbing a bank. And that's just how much God doesn't care, right?
Keeping it real.
Keeping it real. So it doesn't mean that just because you have good intentions that it's going to turn out. Right? Because you have an intention, you don't know if it's good or not, but by taking steps one after another with your intention towards an imagined goal, you will learn.
For me, that perfectly explains why so many people get on this path, but they miss the mark and what it's truly about. And like you said, about aim is that their aim gets off.
They're reacting.
Yes.
They're being aimed at. They're dodging all the arrows. That's no way to live a life.
No.
But there's something more to it too that I think is worth mentioning, and the goodwill reveals itself to be true when we align with it, and what did I say?
Nothing. Something happened to my screen. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay.
I missed the last couple of words you said, though.
Oh, I was just kind of playing with this idea that sometimes we struggle to know where to where to go with our mind. And the thing that reveals itself to be truest and most stable and objectively true is the thing that consistently supplies us with what we need when we are most receptive to it, like the things that resonate with all the good things in life, like mercy, compassion, kindness, humility, you know, the qualities that we would say are desirable.
That's a little abstract, though.
Well, what I mean to say is that the good will does exist. So and I'm saying that because, yes, we have the means to rob a bank and so on, but it doesn't, it's not the it doesn't bring us towards wholeness, you know?
Yeah, I'm almost sorry now. I use that as an example. Don't
Well,
let that trip you up, Jesse. The
No,
only
I
reason
know, but
the only reason I said it, let me save myself here, or at least try
go
to.
ahead. Go ahead.
The only reason I said it is to emphasize the impersonality of it, that the law works for everyone.
The law. Okay, gotcha.
The law. Yeah. Yeah. And the reason I was saying, you know, you're being a little abstract was that, so we get too caught up in our minds, right? You know, the mind gets congested with thoughts, and we find we almost create we create our own problems, but we get ourselves in a jam and we don't know what we want. Right? Because a lot of our thinking is driven by what we want and how to get it, whether that's food, shelter, clothing, relationship, whatever it is, basic stuff. So as you move towards those things, they reveal themselves more and more with your intention. But like you said before, you want to keep it proximal, the very first thing you need. In other words, don't set up humility as a goal.
Right.
Because it's too abstract. You know, if you want to set yourself up to be humble, then you can look for ways to serve other people in their immediate needs, you know, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, whatever.
That's what I was getting at is when we do those things, it proves itself to be aligned with something good. Is that too abstract?
Yeah. Well, no, no, it's not. But see, there's the problem, because then you can get hung up on what's good. You see, because you don't always. I like to say that your what interests you, your interests are your inner guidance. If you find yourself interested in something, that means God is interested in it. You see, I mean, you have to be out of the way. I mean, you could get, I think you get a sense of this. If you're open at all to experiencing God, then if something interests you, that means you should move towards it. And regardless of what it is, because you don't know what it's going to hold for you. But if you identify good as that which God gives you, which is another way to say that, right? Yeah, I can either say, wow, that really interests me, or I can say, God wants that. God is interested in that. God wants to know more about that.
Right. Which makes it
you do that enough, and you will automatically be humble, because that is humility.
Exactly.
I see.
Yeah. It's like, you know, I used to do it all the time. You know, I had a wood shop, commercial woodworking, manufacturing, and I had to work out problems all the time. And it was a beautiful opportunity to let God figure it out. You know, I would just start moving and then let God move me. And I would start thinking about it, and then I would let God think me. You see, and then things would start to come together.
Right. You know, it's been my experience often that you're talking about God moving through us. We'll just call it life. The a greater measure of presence and life moving through our what we consider our vehicles and being. My experience has been this whole idea of concept of the will of God and the goodness, Jesse, you keep talking about, is it always surprises me what it is. Because when I open up to that, like the magician key in the tarot, and he just raises that wand up, when you aspire to the high, what you consider the highest good, and just open to that, what then comes through is the will, because you've gotten out of the way. The will flows through, but then it manifests, and then it's like Christmas. It's a surprise. But through that, it's like we never know what it's going to be ahead of time. If we did, we'd be doing it.
Right.
You know,
Right?
there's this other element we cannot ever forget, and that's the heart. You know, when we're talking about goals and targets and missing the mark or hitting the target or any of these things, our intentions, those are all things we think we want. You see, and thinking what you want, that's the head. That's not the heart. How many, you know, a lot of people, you ask them what they want, they can't answer you. Because, and it's not because they don't know what they want too many things, and so they're confused. They can't separate out one thing.
Yeah.
So they can't answer, what do you want?
It's not
But
pure.
if you ask, but if you ask a person, what do you love? They'll tell you every time.
Yeah.
We know what we love. That's our guidance. You see, in the book of Revelation in the Bible, the angel is ripping into one town or another, and he's saying, you know, you guys are okay, but I've got one thing against you. You left your first love. He wasn't talking about romantic partnership. He was talking about, what do you love? Are you true to that? Can you be true to that? See? What are you going to let get in the way, get between you and what you love? Whatever that is, that ain't good. It's not good.
It's a hard lesson.
Yeah. That's the thing we have to be true to. And if you're true to what you love, you are by definition worshiping God. You are by definition putting God first.
Yeah.
Because what you love is God for you.
Because God is love.
Yeah. Well, I hate that. I mean, it's okay.
It's the
On whatever
truth, though.
level you want.
But
Yeah, it is the
like
truth.
not like we think of it. It's
Exactly.
you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. God is love. God is what you love.
Right.
That
That's
you
our
are not going to
connection.
be able to worship. Exactly. And you're not going to be able to worship anything but that. And if that, what you love is money, money for you is God. You see? Not the thing, you know, not
Yeah.
thing,
Right.
it's just paper or numbers in a computer.
Yeah.
But what does money represent? What does money enable you to do?
Yeah.
See? That's what you love.
Mhm.
So it's very important to know what that is, and you can't figure it out, right? Because
Right.
most of what we love is We've stuffed it so far down down deep, we don't even know sometimes.
I think it's
And so,
close. Sorry, go ahead.
no, it's all right, go.
I think it's close to liberty, like what true liberty is.
Exactly.
Yes, true liberty,
Yeah.
not these
Yeah.
mental concepts, but what
Right,
that
right.
truly
Which,
is what.
yeah, which goes
Yes.
hand in hand with the pursuit of happiness, right?
Yes.
That's an unfortunate word because happiness is kind of fleeting and, you know, comes and goes and all of that.
Right.
But it's like the in pursuit of a meaningful life, in pursuit of self-expression, of being able to let God inhabit you and experience through you. That's what they meant by the pursuit of happiness. It's creativity and agency,
Right.
ability.
It's that which in the noble aspects of being, of our being.
Absolutely. The upright, yeah. Being upright. Knowing what you're about. Being upright means you know where you stand.
Right.
You're standing right in the middle of the circle. And when you stand in the middle of the circle, you know that your every thought, word, and deed is a pebble in the pond that's going to reverberate out into the universe. That's what it means to be upright, or to stand in the center of the circle. You know where you stand. You know what you're about. And the more you're true to that, then the more it's true to you. The more it will reveal itself in you. But you have to be bold. You have to step out on it. You can't just sit and let it and hope that it comes to you. You have to work at it.
Right.
But when it comes, it doesn't come because of what you worked at. It's a paradox. You know, this is the faith versus action, faith versus works debate. It's crazy, it's stupid debate. Because, you know, it's like somebody said, I think it was Edison or one of those guys, he said, if you prepare enough, you'll get lucky. It really says it all. You want to experience God, you're not going to get there by meditating, but if you meditate, it's going to happen. It's a paradox. You don't meditate, you're stuck in this plane of manifestation. You're going to just be bumping against the guardrails till the time you die. But if you're spiritually awakened and you put your intention towards the good, what you love, then everything will open up. That sounds like a good place to stop.
Thanks, Michael.
You bet, Jesse. Glad you're here. You ask great questions.
Yeah, everything tonight's been very insightful. It's been amazing. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Nice to have you here. I hope you come back.
Absolutely.
Now, these classes are on Saturday mornings too. I teach I'll teach this class. It'll be different, but it'll be essentially this class, same topic. Saturday morning at 11 o'clock Eastern time.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'll be there.
All right.
Good to see
Thank
you
you,
guys.
Mark.
Have a good night.
Good to see you,
All right,
Jesse.
Jesse. Good night.
Good night.
Thanks,
Good
everybody.
night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Nice to see you.
Bye, Teresa.
Michael, if it's okay, I might DM you. Is that okay?
You might what?
I might DM you. I might have some questions.
Oh yeah, sure.
I'd like to
Absolutely.
establish a contact with you, if that's okay.
All right. I'll look for it.
Great. Thank you. Good night.
All right. Good night. So how the hell are you?
Wow. It's been a rough week.
Has it?
Yes. Yes, very.
I'm going to
Great
stop the
class.
recording.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, great class.